Well, we're still moving along. We're looking at writing equations of linear functions. And in this chapter, section 4-5, we're talking about scatter plots and lines of fit. And in this video here in a moment, I'm going to show you how to do a scatter plot in an Excel spreadsheet, and as well as allowing the spreadsheet to give us a line of fit and an equation even for that line. But let's start off here, and this corresponds to example 2, which is on page 248 and at the top of page 249. And the data that we're going to be looking at is actually at the top of page 249. And so this deals with music. And it says here that the table shows the dollar value in millions for the sales of CDs for the year. Make a scatter plot and determine what relationship exists, if any. Of course, when we're talking about with a relationship, we're determining does our data, and when we plot it in a scatter plot, does it give us a positive correlation, a negative correlation, or no correlation? And so down here we have a table, and we see here along the first row that we've got the year 2000, 2001, and continues on out to 2008. And then in the second row, we've got sales. And these are sales in millions of dollars. So in 2000, we had $13,215,000 worth of sales of CDs. And by the time we get to 2008, we've got $5,471,000 in the sales of CDs for the year. And let's think about this. Our year is going to represent our x-axis or our x values, and sales is going to represent our y value, or on the y-axis. And so keep this table handy. You may want to review it because we're going to use this data and we're going to input it into a Excel spreadsheet, and then we're going to let the spreadsheet create a scatter plot for us. And then we're going to take it one step further, and we're going to talk about how we could do a line of fit if we did it by hand or by manually. And then also we're going to look at how we could allow Excel to give us a line of fit as well as that equation. All right, well, I've opened up an Excel spreadsheet, and with that, I'm going to take this data on these sales of music, CD sales of music from 2000 to 2008, and I'm going to enter it into Excel and let Excel work with me to create a scatter plot. And so the first thing I'm going to do, and you have to follow my cursor here, I'm going into column 1, and in column 1, I'm going to enter what I saw in the table for the year in row 1. So I'm going to hit 2000. I'm going to hit my little arrow button down. I'm going to go down to the next cell, 2001. And I'm going to continue doing this all the way until I get to 2008. So there's 2005, 2006, 2007, and 2008. So let's see, 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going back up here to column B, row 1, and in that I'm going to enter the data of the sales in millions for CDs. And I think in that previous slide I said 13 million. It's actually 13 billion. So in 2000 there was $13,215,000,000 in CD sales, and then we got 12,909, 12,044, 11,233, 11,447. We had a little bit of a bounce back year that year. 10,520,000,000, because all this is in millions now. 9,373. I'm just hitting the little arrow down to go down to the next cell. 7,452. And lastly, 5,471,000,000. And let me review my data, because if anything can mess it up is if I put the data in wrong. 13.215, 12.909, 12.044, 11.233, 11.447, 10.520, 9.373, 7.452, and 5.471. All right. Now, another thing that Excel can do for me here is it can help me find a scatter plot. And so I'm going to go up here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click into A1, and I'm going to hold my mouse down and drag the data and highlight all the data that I entered, because this is all everything that I want in the scatter plot. Then I'm going to go up here to the top, and I'm going to hit the little tab Insert, and it gives me a bunch of options. Some of this is charts, and so I'm going to pick charts, and particularly I'm picking scatter plots. And so I'm just going to pick this first one right here, and I'm going to click on it, and you can see here it is giving me a chart of the data that I entered. And if I hover over like this point right here, it says that when X is 2,000, Y is 13,215. Let's look at the chart itself. Here on the Y-axis, it goes from 0 up to 14,000. And on the X-axis, it goes from 1999 all the way out here to 2009. So it kind of expands it a little bit beyond what data I used. And now if I look at this data and how it is plotted, and I ask myself, what's the relationship? Well, remember, we're talking about positive correlation, negative correlation, or no correlation. And here my data is trending down and to the right. And that would tell me that I've got a negative correlation. Remember, positive is up and to the right, negative is down and to the right. And if there was no correlation, everything would be all over everywhere. But I do see a trend line of how it is going negative down and to the right. So, now one other thing when we're talking about doing a line of fit. If I were to actually plot the data, let's say I pick this point right here, 2001, 12,909, and then maybe picked another point, depending on where my line went through. I'd calculate my slope, and then I'd use point slope and go to slope intercept. But while I'm here in Excel, I can click on this right here where it says Add Chart Element. And the first thing I'm going to do is ask it to give me a trend line, and I'm going to pick a linear line, and you can see that it puts a line in here as it's best trying to fit within this data that we have, and so that gives me a line of fit. And if I wanted to get an equation for that line, I click back on here, and I go back to trend line, and then I go to more trend line options. And let's see, I want an option. Let me close this. Do that again. I'll close that. Let me go back to Add Chart Element, Trend Line, more Trend Line Options. It gives me this pop-up box, and I say, okay, I want to display equation on the chart. And if I look carefully right here, I can see that y equals negative 890.03x plus 2e plus 0.06. And that e plus 0.06 is giving me scientific notation, which means that I would have this 2 followed by 6 zeros. So Excel here is giving me an equation, y equals negative 890.03x plus 2 million. Now, determining a line of fit, particularly if we're doing it by hand or whatever technology we're using, and getting an equation is imprecise. In other words, it really depends on which points I pick, exactly where I draw the line, and depending, if I calculated it and you calculated it, we might come up with a slightly different answer. But one thing that won't be different is what our trend line is if we've entered the data correctly. Now, when we go to the next chapter section, we're going to talk about using our TI-84 calculators to do scatter plots and also get it to give us a trend line or a line of regression. But here we go. We're using it to find a trend line, which we have done using Excel spreadsheet.